I'm Ray Stults, father of 8 kids, barber for 100 years, live in Gold River, California, lived in Sacramento since 1957. Got here in North Dakota before that, so that was my humble beginnings and my humble ending, I guess, but there we are.
Okay. And so your childhood years, you grew up on a farm in...
I was born in Ryder, North Dakota, in a 2-story house. My dad had a dray line, which was like a freight hauling line. I was the youngest of 6 kids. Lived there till I was like 4 years old. Moved to the farm then in like 1938, 39, somewhere along there. It was pretty amazing when I think back on it. There were 6 kids and 2 adults, a 1-bedroom house, and no electricity, no running water. The first year my dad moved a granary up and made a kitchen and another bedroom out of that. So we had 2 bedrooms and a kitchen and a living room.
Out of a granary?
Yeah. So with 8 people living in the house, and then my sister Kay graduated my high school shortly after that, and she left, went to Illinois. So there were only 7 of us in, and then it gradually, as my sisters married, my brother, they all dropped down to where I was the last one. I had my own bedroom finally.
Wow.
So you were the youngest, and what was the age gap? And
10 years difference. My Kay was 10 years older than I.
Okay, so every year?
Year and a half, somewhere along there, yeah. Yeah, it was.
And who were you closest to in your family, of all your brothers and sisters?
Well, when I was young, my brother, he was kind of my hero, my idol, you know.
And how much older was he?
He was 6 years older than I.
Okay.
And so I followed him around on the farm and did all the things. And I always said I thought he was trying to get me killed so he could be the only boy in the family, but I don't know if that was true or not. But we did some crazy things that he would suggest I should do, like ride a steer cap out in the barnyard and dump me off into a ditch. How old were you? Probably about 10. He dropped me off. He dropped me off into a ditch, so the steer did, which was about 4 feet below where I was. But things like that. So, but he was kind of my idol at the time. I wanted to be big like him.
Interesting. So what were your earliest memories? Do you remember moving to the farm when you were 4 years old?
My earliest memory that comes to mind, has been there all the time, is when before we moved to the farm, the Christmas before we moved to the farm. I remember standing in the living room of the house. We had a table radio, probably good size, radio. And I remember standing in the living room there and looking at it, had a round glass dial on it. Mm-hmm. And I stood and looked at that, and I could see the reflection of the Christmas tree with the Christmas lights on it.
Oh, okay.
That's my earliest memory, fond memory. It's a very fond memory of that. And then I remember starting school, first grade. All 6 of us kids walked from the farm into Ryder 2¼ miles, and my mom had sent me a note to give to Miss Scarperud, the first grade teacher, telling her who I was. Nobody, you didn't take your kids and go, patting on the head and say, "You'll be okay." We would walk to school, and when it was over, we would walk back home, It was that simple at that time.
What about when the weather changed and got really nasty? How did you?
Dad would take us, in. We would walk during the spring and the fall when he was busy with, spring's work or harvest. But in the winter time, he would take us into town. And other time, we didn't walk all the time, but we walked a good bit of the time. Winter time, I remember when my sister Lucille had her first child, Bill, my dad came in with the wagon that he hauled manure in, not the wagon, the sled, and a team of horses that picked us up and had straw on the bottom and blankets to put over us. And we were nice and warm, and he was telling me that I was uncle. I remember that. Didn't dawn on me right away what that meant. But I was probably in almost to high school age or somewhere along there, close to that, probably in the upper grades.
So how did you get, is that how you got to school when it was winter time on the sled all the time?
Well, sometimes the roads weren't bad. He would bring us bring the car, drive us to the car.
And do you remember what kind of car it was?
Yeah, we had, the first one was Model A, and then I remember he had a 1948 Ford. That was pretty fancy. When I was a junior, I walked to school in the winter because that was the winter of the airlift when they flew airplanes in, brought feed into the cattle that were out in the field and stuff, and the Army came in because there was so much snow, there was no place.
What year was that?
1950, I think it was. Oh. There was so much snow that they couldn't plow any longer. They plowed the roads open. They brought in a rotary plow and plowed. It got so deep they couldn't do it anymore. So then we couldn't move the car or horses or anything. So I walked to school that winter. So the 2.5 miles of school in the snow is not a farce.
Did you enjoy school?
I loved it. I loved school. And
what were your favorite subjects or favorite things about it?
Math.
Like math?
And history and English grammar was my worst thing ever. I never could figure out why I need to tear a sentence apart, but they made us do it. But
that's important, Dad.
Now I know it. I didn't know it then. It's too late now.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that really kept me in school happy was the sports. Baseball and basketball. That was you look forward to that. So.
Mm-hmm.
Did you play both?
Oh,
and
yeah. I'm a multi-sport.
What position do you remember? Did you play a lot of positions?
I was a catcher in baseball, and a guard in basketball. Not very good at either one. But there weren't many guys at school, so you automatically had a position.
So is it a school team or is it like an American Legion?
No, school team. Then I played American Legion ball during the summer when school was out.
You didn't have to help in the fields, or you could get
My
away?
dad always made sure I had time to go to a baseball game. That was one thing he always.
Nice.
Yeah, we didn't have that.
He made sure that we were out in the field in the summertime, putting up hay and stuff. The time for go to a game, we'd go.
Nice.
My dad was a big supporter of me. So
that's good.
Yeah, it was great.
That's good.
Great memories of that.
Was it a time when parents went and sat in the bleachers and went to the games?
My dad used to go to the basketball games, and the Sunday games, they would, in Ryder, they would park cars around the fence with a backstop and all that stuff, and the parents would sit in the car. Some had good hat, they'd honk the horn.
Mm-hmm.
And how many kids were in your class on average?
My senior class, there was 13.
13?
7 girls and 7 boys and 6 girls, I think it was.
There's the math right there.
And you still weren't valedictorian.
I was close. I was close. I went number 9.
And what about your siblings? Did they play sports as much as you, or?
No. My brother played football. He didn't even finish high school, but he played football, I think, one year. But he didn't play anything else. The girls didn't play sports back then. They were cheerleaders, or part of the cheer crowd, but they didn't play sports. So I guess being the youngest was the good thing, because you could do those things at that time.
Yeah.
What about World War II? Do you have memories of World War II?
Definitely. I remember December 8th going to school. Miss Scarperud again was a teacher. I was in the 3rd grade, and she got up before the class, and the morning was school started at 9. She got up before class at 9 o'clock and said, "The Japs attacked us yesterday." And I was like, "What happened?" I didn't really recognize it today on the 6th or the 7th. I'm sorry, but it became a real thing, and then all the rationing and the things that happened. I think one of the most interesting things to me that comes to my mind about that was that toothpaste came in kind of a almost aluminum tube. It was a metallic tube of some sort. Well, if you're out of toothpaste, you had to take the old tube in and turn it in before you could get a new tube of toothpaste. They had rationing of sugar and all those things. And the Ely's ran a red and white store in Ryder where my folks shopped. And Mr. Ely had this, like a 5-gallon jar of some sort that had a syrupy stuff in it that was like sugar. It didn't taste like syrup. It didn't have a syrup taste, but it was that texture. So if you're one of the good customers, he would sneak you on a half a gallon or so of that. So you had a sweetener because you could only get so much sugar. Being on the farm, we had no problem with meat and stuff like that because we had that. But there was rationing of meat for people and stuff. Tires, you couldn't buy tires, so they would recap tires.
Oh, retread them?
They would put vulcanize a new tread that went around, which would come off in a few months. It would fly off and you'd have to go back in and have another recap put on them. It was very interesting because we also had the blackouts out on the farm, which seems totally ridiculous.
Because you're already blacked out.
Well, we were out on the farm, there was nothing out there. There was prairie, but the cities, I talk to people now, say they lived in San Francisco, they had to put drapes over all their windows so no light shine at night. And so they made us do that out on the farm. Here we are sitting out there on the hill with a kerosene lamp, but we had to put stuff over the window so that the enemy couldn't see the lights there, know what was there.
Did you feel like it was real?
I don't think it really, the war was real. We were aware of it. The radio came out with the news about what was going on. But at my age, I was, when in 1945 the war was over, I was 12 years old. So it didn't really affect me personally. It affected my parents. It affected all, but we were aware of it.
Did you have any relatives that fought in the war?
I had an Uncle Max, my mom's brother, who was killed at Normandy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was in the first wave and went into Normandy and never made it to shore.
Wow.
Then my mom went back. They actually brought his body back to the country, and my mom went to Illinois for a funeral for him.
Interesting.
And where out in Illinois?
I'm not sure. Greenup, one of those small towns out in the southeast part of Illinois. I think the other thing that I remember about that was she rode the Greyhound bus, and when she came back, she brought some fresh peaches with her from Illinois, which we didn't have in North Dakota. I did grow back there, but they could grow them in Illinois, so she brought a box of fresh peaches back with her on the...
Had you had peaches before?
Yeah, they would get these boxes in the stores in Ryder, but they were, a small wooden box, maybe 2 layers, usually one, but sometimes they have 2 layers, but they would pick them so green.
Yeah, but they never
they were like rocks, they looked more yellow, but they didn't soften up or anything, so, but we thought it was pretty great, got to get to have a peach.
Something sweet.
Yeah.
So was the radio like the entertainment and did you follow the war then regularly, sit around for a news hour?
Well, they had the news on that, but they also had the movie newsreels, which were were so distorted because from what they showed on the newsreel, we should have been done with that war in about 2 months because we just bombed that out of everybody and everything. We won everything. We shot down all the enemy airplanes, and it was propaganda. It was to keep people interested and enthused about the war. So it was, we got that, and out on the farm we didn't use the radio much because it was we ran off batteries until we got electricity. So we had a car battery that you'd plug the radio or just hook it up to the wires like you would on a car. And so you didn't use the radio all day, and you didn't, there were some radio shows at night that we would listen to. I remember my mom and me sitting there. My dad belonged to the Oddfellows Lodge, and when everybody else was gone, my mom and I'd sit there and we would listen to Mr. District Attorney, which is really just spooky, these guys are, bad guys were coming after all people and everything. We're sitting there scared to death until we finally went to bed. But the radio was the entertainment for, but we didn't, Sherry used to say, well, what kind of music to listen to? We didn't listen to music. It was, that wasn't part of our thing.
Yeah.
We went outside and did things or whatever, entertained ourselves, didn't have to be entertained by a radio or television.
And was there a radio in your vehicles? No.
Oh, no.
And then on the farm, what kind of animals do you remember having?
Oh, cows, chickens, pigs, horses, turkeys.
And then did you help with butchering the chickens and the turkeys, or did everybody?
We never butchered any turkeys. We butchered chickens. We sold the turkeys to other people. But the chickens, my mom was pretty good at wringing necks. And so then we would stick them in a bucket of hot water and pluck the feathers and all that. And butchering cattle and
The smell of those wet feathers.
That's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Yeah. That's something you want to do too. So.
Stephanie's pretty good at chopping.
I got a little bit better after the first one.
Yeah, it was an interesting life because it was very primitive, but didn't seem primitive,
You didn't know any different.
Yeah, I mean, and everybody lived like that, so it wasn't like, oh, woe is me,
What about the telephone? Did you have a telephone?
Never had a phone on the farm.
You never did?
Never had a phone. If my dad, mom, or anybody needed to make a phone call, they'd go into town to the central operator. Mabel, somebody or other was her name, his old maid.
Of course it's Mabel.
Yeah. And she lived in this little building, where I don't know if she even had any kind of cook, maybe a hot plate, but she lived in this little building and the switchboard was there and you'd go in and tell her what you wanted to call. She'd ring it up for you, and then my dad, if he needing parts for machinery or something, or some family in Illinois that they needed to talk to or something, that's what you do. But we never did, because this guy owned this little telephone company, and we were too far from the nearest phone. It wouldn't pay for him to string the wires and the poles and everything. They got about $1 a month for telephone, I think, at that time. So we never did have one.
So when when they got electricity to the farms in the United States, what year was that? That was
Probably
the Depression, right?
No. Well, not for us. REA came. In the towns they had electricity, but the farms didn't have.
Yeah.
So then there's this, what was called?
What was it called?
Of something Valley, but an REA, Rural Electrification Association. Pardon me?
Surrey Valley?
No,
No, it was down in the southern part of the country somewhere. And they started there, and then they brought in the lines and stuff, and they brought the poles and the little wiring and everything, and they would put one on a farm. They would put one pole in the yard wherever you wanted it, so they would have a light on that called a yard light, and then you ran wires from that to your house, your barn. Yourself, that was on yourself, but they put in for free, put in the wiring to it. My dad was a great guy. And I remember we got the electricity on the farm, and he had an electrician who was going to come out and wire the house. But he went into town and bought an International Harvester refrigerator and put in the kitchen before we had electricity in there. That he was ready when the electricity got there.
He was ready to have it.
Yeah, he was. My dad was a great guy. And having electric lights in the house where you could just flip a switch and we actually had lights in the barn like that. They'd have to carry a gas lantern into the barn with hay and straw and stuff. So that was a big. And then and then the winter time, when it was cold, snow and everything, you had this yard light so you could see to walk between the barn and the house. When it was before that time, you didn't have the lantern lit when you're out there, so you're walking on the snow between the barn and the house. Little hazardous.
So by the time you got to high school, when did you start driving, and what car did you drive?
I was probably driving before high school. My brother was we had, I think it was like a truck we had, if I remember. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember he and I were out in a field somewhere, and he goes, "Okay, you can drive." And so I got in the truck, and of course I had a clutch, shift and everything, and I killed the engine several times before I figured out how to do that. That was my first driving experience. I didn't have a driver's license until I went away to barber college. And my dad said, you might need to get a job driving something when you're down there to help support yourself, so you need a driver's license. So I think I had graduated from high school, I think, and he and I went to Minot. He drove me in there, went to the courthouse, took the written test, and a highway patrolman would give you a driving test. So we had the 48 Ford, and Dad had parked a few blocks away, a couple, 3 blocks away from the courthouse, and so this highway patrolman said, "Okay," takes me over there, so we go to the car, and I go around the driver's side, and no, you don't do that, you get on the passenger side, it's dangerous getting out there in traffic. So I got in, got the other side.
Building up confidence.
Yeah, and so then my dad I'd checked checked the lights and the horn and all this, I'll make sure everything works. And my dad had he'd had a green plastic or cellophane strip he put up there like you would have to cut the glare down, like you would on a tinted windshield now. But he thought, patrolman said, "That's not good, you can't have that, that's illegal." I get in the car, he said, "Okay, you're gonna drive." He in the passenger side. I go to pull out, and I'll put your arm out, look in your mirror. I got out there, I drive down the street, I said, "Okay, make a left turn here." I made a left turn. "No, you don't do that, you go to the middle of the street and then you turn, you don't cut across like that." So we get to another street and he says, "Okay, make a left turn here." So I go to the middle of the street, make a turn. Well, the guy who was behind me, he cut inside of me and got in front of me. And the guy's patrolman says, "Okay, go get him." "Go get him what?" "Go chase him." I said, "No, I'm not doing that." And he's sitting there honking the horn, and everything. And he said, "Okay, keep going on, we're on a city street in Minot doing about 40 miles an hour, which is ridiculous."
Yeah.
Finally, he pulled the guy over. I recognized what was going on, I guess. Pulled him over, he gets out of the car, goes up to the window of the guy, and gets his driver's license. He says, "Okay, go back to the courthouse." I go, "Okay, it's so much for this." He said, "Your license will be there in 10 days. So I drove about 4 blocks of all I had to do which I was very thankful of.
Citizens arrest.
I pretended off for about 5 minutes. So, anyway, that was
How about neighbors? Did you have some close neighbors that you were friends with?
We had the Hatchett family lived in Ryder. There were 6 kids in that family. We used to go back and forth with them on holidays, Thanksgiving and stuff. And we had neighbors, the Krugers, Emil Kruger, were a few ways away, and we used to go to their house for Sunday dinner. They'd come to our house for Sunday dinner and stuff. At one point in time, they used to have a once a month Sunday thing at somebody's farm. It was all the people around there would go to this farm, and the women would bring all the food, and we'd all spend a Sunday afternoon at their place. And that you worked a lot, so you didn't really do a lot of socializing, but also had a good life. I had a great life.
And lots of chicken.
So Barber College was in
Fargo, North Dakota, where they made the movie.
Well, high school you played baseball. I remember you.
Basketball and baseball.
Basketball and baseball. And all the years that you went to high school, or just?
I played baseball all the years in high school. I didn't play basketball the first year. No, I take it back. I did too. I was on the JV team the first year in freshman. And then the second year I went up to the varsity team. Didn't really play much. And then my third year was when we had the winter that I didn't go to school, so I didn't play that year. And then I played as a senior. Not very much and not very good.
And you were a catcher in baseball?
Yeah. Nobody else wanted to do it now.
And you batted left because we all batted left.
Yeah.
From Mark and I, at least.
I remember how I started that. My brother and his friends, when we were living in Ryder, during the Depression, I remember they were out in the street in front of the house playing baseball, and they invited me to come out. Like I say, I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and I remember it was very dark, the dust in the air from how bad and dry everything was, and I actually remember seeing tumbleweeds blowing down the street, and they invited me to even bat once, and I had just picked up a bat and started batting left-handed. That did it the rest of the time. I don't know why, but it doesn't matter, I guess. Not today, it doesn't matter.
So when did you decide, or how did the decision come to be that you were, after high school, that you wanted to become a barber?
Well, I had started cutting some hair on, brother-in-laws and stuff like that. Not very well, obviously, but I did it. And I still remember sitting in the kitchen out on the farm one Sunday night. My dad and I went in the kitchen. My dad goes, "Well, son, what do you think you want to do when you get out of high school?" And I said, "Well, I think I'd like to be a lawyer." And he goes, "That takes a lot of school, a lot of money, and we don't have that." I said, "Okay, maybe I'll be a school teacher." He said, "Well, you still got to go to college a lot," so on and so forth. And we had a family lived in Douglas, which was like 12 miles from Ryder, and they had a son who had become a barber. And my dad said, I don't remember his name, the boy, but he said, he became a barber. He's doing, I think he's doing okay. And he said, during the Depression, Jack McDonald was the only barber in Ryder, of course. And he said he did all right because he had the nicest house in town.
Yeah, he was the only barber.
Yeah, so I kind of said, okay, that works for me. So that was kind of decided. This was probably late winter in the spring when I was still in high school before I graduated.
Oh, wow.
So I started barber college October 1 of that year, 51. So
you didn't really have too much downtime.
stayed on the farm, helped with the harvest until I had to go to school.
Now, did you guys have threshers come through and
Yep.
harvest for you guys?
Yeah, they would have, this one family had a threshing machine. They were like two brothers and a stepbrother or something, Johanssons and Christensen. And they had a threshing machine and an old D John Deere tractor. The top speed was about 3 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And they would pull this threshing machine from farm to farm, and each farmer would put either a bundle, they call them a bundle rack, with a wagon thing that had slats on the sides. You'd throw the grain bundles in there with a pitchfork, and then take it up to the threshing machine and thresh them. Or if you didn't have a team of horses and a wagon to do it with, you would just send one of the people would go, one of the farmers would go and help, and he'd go around and help different guys loading their wagons up.
And how many men were on this team, threshing team?
They're probably like 8 different farms around there that each one sent a team of horses and a bundle rack. So, and then you had like a couple of other people went out and helped each other. And then when they came to our farm, my brother and I would haul the grain from the machine up, shovel it into the granary. So you probably had 8 teams of horses.
How many men?
Probably 10.
10?
Yeah. It took us about 2.5 days, I think, to finish our harvest. And then
how many acres did you have?
640.
Oh, okay, so it's pretty
So we would, you would do our farm, and then my brother and dad and other people would.
So you would kind of just help each other out.
Yeah, you went to another farm.
So these men weren't traveling through.
No, they weren't like you were the harvest team. No, this was just the farmers, and you had to had to have somebody working in that in order for them to come there to the farm, and everybody did. I mean, everybody, you used that one machine. So it was a question of, are you going to help? You were going to help because you paid you that, and you were part of the team.
And who owned the threshing machine?
Johansson brothers and one Christensen. He was they were half brothers or something. But they used to come, they would tie up their horses at the farm and they would sleep in the barn. And, when they were at our place, my mom and my sisters would, cook for them. They stayed there all the time. They were there at every farm. So they would, they'd fix them breakfast in the morning. 10 o'clock, they'd take lunch out to them, the field. And at noon, they'd come in and they'd have a big, it was
big meal. That was the big meal.
dinner. It was dinner. It was like a fried chicken, all that stuff. And then at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd take another lunch out to them, which would be a meal for us here. But they were working pretty hard. Then at night, when it got dark, they would come in, unharness horses, tie them up. Then they'd come in and eat another meal. And then they'd stay overnight and get up next day and do it again. Pretty efficient. It was a pretty efficient way of doing it. Everybody, they charged by the hour of the threshing machine, but they paid the guy working, the farmer who had his horses and stuff there, they paid him by the hour too, so it didn't completely offset it, but it
Helped.
It almost offset the cost, so it was really no amount of money that changed hands between
Except for the food
Yeah,
that your
yeah,
mom and
yeah.
sisters would make.
That was all stuff we grew anyways, basically, so it was a very efficient way of doing it, because it didn't really, nobody really put out a lot of money, but everybody got their labor done.
Mm-hmm.
So you went to Barber College. When did you graduate from Barber College?
March 15th, 1952.
Oh, so it was a one year program?
6 months.
6 months. Oh.
6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
We were really smart.
But you didn't move out here until 57.
7.
So where were you cutting hair?
I got a job in Minot when I first got out of Barber College. The guy had just opened a barber shop, and I went and got a haircut and told him I was a barber, and he put me to work, which I think there was one day I had a customer at 9 in the morning. That was it for the whole day. And so I think it was July of that year. I went to work on April 15th. July of that year, I got the job in Garrison. And I worked there, worked there probably 3 years or more. And then we moved up to the Volmer farm. I worked there for a while, and that didn't work out real good, so I got a job in Minot then, working in the shop in Minot. I worked there for about a year, and then we came out here. So from 52 to 57, it was like, 5 years in 2 or 3 different situations.
And that's when you met Cletus and Garrison?
Oh yeah, he was a customer. He had
Is that how you initially met him, just as a customer?
Yeah, he was. Actually, he had a brother, Arnold, who was a little younger, and then we became friends first, and then Cletus had gone into the Marine Corps and came out, and he came in, so then he and I was younger than he, but we still hit it off, so that was how we spent the rest of our...
So were you pretty busy in Garrison at the barbershop?
Oh God, yeah, I'd have 10 or 12 haircuts a day. There was one instance where Vern Dwelly, who was the guy that owned the shop, a really great guy, he had to have a little surgery out in his posterior section, so he was not working there, couldn't work for a couple of weeks, so the guy, Les Herkert, had the job that I took. He left Garrison, went to Greenland to be a barber when they were building Thule Air Force Base up there. So when Vern had the surgery, he couldn't work, so Les had a shop in Fargo, but it was at the college, North Dakota State. So he came up and went to work for 2 weeks with me in the shop. And so I was a pretty slow barber up until that time, no big hurry. And he was pretty fast, so I remember he kept telling me, come on, pick up the anchor, come on, you're too slow. So we worked one Saturday from 8 in the morning till, we closed at 9 at night, and then worked for probably about another hour. and I cut 33 heads of hair that day. And I thought it was miraculous. I was really impressed, but it did help me because I learned to work a little faster than I had before that.
And what was the charge for a haircut?
$1.
$1.
$1.
And
For adults.
any tips or no tips?
Once in a while, somebody give you a nickel. Even in barber college, we got tips once in a while, you know. That was how I was a smoker, so I could buy my cigarettes with the tips I got. Because when I was in barber college, I worked at the Greyhound Bus Depot restaurant in the mornings. So I got all 3 of my meals every day for doing that. I worked 7 days, but I got 7 days of meals. So I didn't have to spend any money. My mom and dad would send me $40 a month for the room rent. I was living in a private home, had a room there with a bathroom. And so I didn't really need any money all the time I was there.
What were you saving up for? Do you remember?
Saving up for my cigarettes.
Just your cigarettes? Some Benson and Hedges?
I don't remember. I think it was Pall Mall at that time.
Pall Mall?
I think so, yeah. But you know, I probably get no more than, maybe you might get $1 a week in tips, because haircuts were 75 cents in the barber college and shaves were 25 cents, so guy wasn't going to give you a real big tip, so you get maybe a nickel or dime would be the most, but you didn't need money. You didn't. Nothing cost anything. I mean.
So did you drive when you were in barber school, or you just got
No, I walked from it was about a little over a mile from where I stayed to the bus depot, so I walked there in the morning, and the barber college was about 3 or 4 blocks away. So I'd walk to the bus depot, start at 5 in the morning, work till 7:30, and then have breakfast, then go to barber school, then walk over to the bus depot for lunch, and the same at night. So, and then walk on home. So it was a good life. It was a good life.
And what was your first car?
1942 Mercury Coupe.
Ooh.
Yeah, Mike Preston bought it for me.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. I needed a car. When I left Minot, I needed a car because Garrison, in Minot, they had buses, and I was staying with my brother, so I could take a bus downtown. But I went to Garrison, so I had to buy a car. So Mike said, I paid him back, but he said, I'll buy a car for you. So we went shopping. Mike was pretty good at all that stuff. And I found a 1937 or 8 4-door Ford, dark green. Man, that was a beauty. That was such a car. I really wanted that. And Mike said, no. They had changed the engine in it, I think, from a 65 horse to an 85 horse engine. And he said it would be too tough on the transmission. You wouldn't want to do that. So we found this 42 Mercury coupe, little 2-door coupe, tan.
Wow.
And man, it was great. Except I drove it. I drove a test drove it with Mike, and had a problem. But they put it in the shop there, and they said, we fixed that. So I drove it to Garrison. I went to my folks' place in Ryder that night, and then next day I drove to Garrison, got through with work at about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I was going to drive back home because I hadn't gotten a room in Garrison yet. Went out in the car, wouldn't start. But we had a neighbor. There was something wrong with the starter, and I don't remember what it was. But anyway, we had a neighbor who was a mechanic. Everybody's a mechanic around there. So on Sunday, took it over to him, and he figured out how to fix it. So I drove that for a good, not too many years. And I bought a 1947 Studebaker. Yeah, that was pretty classy. Drove that for a while, then drove a 49 Plymouth, and I bought a 54 Studebaker. And your mother and I got married, and she had a car, so I got rid of my car.
And what car was that?
55 Ford, yeah. Red.
And that's what you guys drove out to California?
No, she had an accident with that. Rolled it over.
This is something we need to talk
Didn't hear
about.
this story.
Yeah.
And so then she got a 56 Ford, black and white one. That's
So,
what we
new cars? Wow.
They had money. I didn't have a new car, but Michael always had a new car, truck, whatever. So I think, I think they cost about $2,500 or $2,600 at that time for those Fords. Victorias, I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, they're not that long. Yeah,
They
they kind
trim on the
of,
side, they will trim on the side,
Yeah.
the chrome trim went down the side, and there was the Ford rod here with black on the bottom, black on top, and the white in
It's
between
pretty.
there where the chrome was.
yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah.
So when you bought cars in those days, were they financing or would you pay cash up front?
Well, they paid cash. I financed, when I started buying cars, I financed them.
And what was it, like 3 years, 4 years?
Probably 3 years. Probably 3 years, because it wasn't a lot, it wasn't a lot of money. It was
Was it
is good.
interest rates or?
very low
Very
interest
low.
rates. We didn't make a lot of money, so, but I think it was like a 3-year payment on it. Yeah. Not like today.
You guys moved out, did your parents move with you? I never quite understood.
No, they had moved before. They came out here in 1955, I think it was.
And why did they do that?
My sister Kay sent them a train ticket for Christmas. And
Was she out here?
she was living in Fairfield.
And how did she choose that? Do you know?
I don't know. Her husband had been in the Navy. Chuck had been in the Navy.
Nice.
Got out of the Navy and came back there somehow. And he worked in construction, and she opened a drive-in restaurant in Fairfield. Right on Travis Boulevard going out to the Air Force Base. So it was a good little restaurant because all these airmen and everything would go by there when they were going out back to the base. And so she sent him a train ticket to come out for Christmas. I remember standing in the kitchen talking to my dad. He was really not sure that he should do that. Beverly and Art, my sister Beverly and her husband, were going to stay on the farm and take care of the animals while they were gone. My dad never came back. He fell in love with it out here. And so he sent my mom back. She had an auction and sold the farm and everything. My dad thought this is the greatest place ever. He used to go back there on vacation, and people didn't even want to talk to him because he was always telling them how great California was. So they stayed here, and so then we came out here on vacation. Must have been in 55 or 56.
You drove out?
Yeah, with your mom's friend Mary Ann Burkhardt.
Oh, fine.
Klein then. Then we drove out here and then went back, and then so that must have been in 56. The summer of 56, and then 57, realized things weren't working. I mean, not going to make any money. There was no way to get ahead back there, so we decided to come out here.
And why Sacramento as opposed to Fairfield?
I was going to go be in Fairfield. I thought there was a barber shop there that was going to hire me, but we got out here and he already had a full house. So I came to Sacramento to Barber College downtown to take a refresher course for the state board, and the guy who was the manager of the school was a next door neighbor of Lewis Caldwell, who had the barber shop there. That's the Lucky Market. And so he said, oh, his barber just left. He said, about the same age as you, people wouldn't probably even know he was gone. So I went out there and he hired me when I got my license, and ended up in Fairfield. I did Sacramento instead of Fairfield.
And where was Mom with you at that point?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so where were you guys living at that point?
Well, we lived with my folks in Fairfield while I did the barber college thing, and then after I got the job, I did it for a while until we found the house on Gilligan Way.
So you just commute from Fairfield every day?
Wow.
Wasn't very bad at that time. It wasn't the traffic you have today,
Cars only went 25 miles.
that Ford was pretty fast. I drove at 100 miles an hour across Montana. There was a Chevy.
Did you really?
Well, there was a Chevy Impala was chasing me. I wasn't gonna let him get ahead. That was when we were on when I came out on vacation.
Was Mark in the car at that time? Was Mark in the car?
Oh, he
at the
wasn't
time?
born at
He wasn't born at
Oh,
the
no,
time.
no, that
Summer
was
56.
previous.
Okay.
That was when Marianne Burkhart and your mom and I drove out here, coming across Montana, wide open country, and this guy was chasing me, following me. And I got up to 100 miles an hour and drove like that for quite a while out there. And there was no traffic, no nothing. Fortunately, no patrolman. But no, that was a pretty fast car. That was a 3-speed overdrive.
Wow.
It was a great car. I had the police interceptor engine in it, the V8 police
Jeez,
interceptor.
really?
I think it had like 200 horsepower engine.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah, it was fast. It was fast.
And so then when did you go from the barbershop at Lucky's to start?
1961, April 29th, 1961.
And how did you and Larry become?
He came to work for me that fall.
And you never knew him before that, he just,
No, I don't remember how I knew his uncle, who had a barbershop over on like 45th and C.
Oh,
Wow.
that's Larry's?
That was Larry's uncle.
Yeah, I know where the...
Boyer?
Yeah,
Morale Boyer had it.
yeah.
He was his uncle, and he called me somehow and said that my nephew's coming out here from Montana, looking a barber. He said, looking for a job. And it happened that Errol had left. Errol had enlisted in the Army, so I was looking for somebody at the time, and so I had to wait till he got his license here. Larry didn't have his license, so he had to go and take the exam and stuff. So he came to work, I think, like in October of '61.
and so you were just like what you're doing now, leasing, is that how it works?
Yeah, I had bought the equipment. I bought the equipment from a guy who had opened the shop 6 months before, had gone through a divorce, wasn't doing any business, and he decided he wanted to go back to Wisconsin or Michigan, somewhere back there. So he wanted to sell the shop. Jack Brixey had called me, and he said, he was buying a barbershop in North Sacramento where he was working, and he said, hey, I'd like to have you as my partner. I said, why don't you come out and we'll talk? And I went out there and we talked. I said, Jack, I worked over here for 4 years at South Sacramento, and I don't know anybody in North Sacramento, so it'd be hard for me. I'd have to start all over building a business. And he said, well, I understand. And he said, Jack and Isla, remember Isla?
Yeah, I remember both of them.
Yeah. And so he said, I saw the bee where there's a barbershop on Freeport Boulevard for sale. So I looked it up, and looked the bee up, and he had a phone number. I called him and went over and met the guy, and 2 weeks later, I was there. I mean, totally dumb. I had no idea what I was doing even, but.
Have you figured it out since?
That's it.
Still remember those big chairs? They were ginormous.
Those club chairs?
Yeah.
Big club chairs? Yeah.
Never wanted to leave.
Yeah,
Captain Pike.
And then Dad would put that thing across for him.
Yeah,
And then when
right.
you got big enough for you didn't have to sit on that seat.
I still have that thing you put across there.
Same upholstery?
I have those 2 of them. They're black upholstery.
Yeah, with the thumb.
Those checkers on them, and whatever. I still have them.
So you were up at the front for a long time, where the...
Well, I was
Backside, right?
pardon me?
Was it in the front or towards the back?
Well, that first shop was on the side, the other building where the sushi place.
Where the breezeway is, yeah.
Yeah,
They were,
yeah.
that was facing north like I am now. I was there till '66, and then moved up the front, which was a really neat shop. That was a really nice
I
shop.
like that shop.
Yeah. Stayed there till '78, then I moved back to where I am now.
Okay.
And why did you move a bigger spot?
The guy was remodeling the center. He had bought the center and he was remodeling it because it was useless. I mean, there was so much wasted space in the building the way they had it. They had offices that were inside a hallway, coming from an outside door and walk down the hallway so he redid the whole thing. And he said, you're gonna be over there. So, well, the good part was he actually put in the shop. He put in the equipment and everything. So that was in 1978. And here we are 40 odd years later.
You know, for me though, it still seems like it wasn't that long ago that you moved back there. It still seems like, oh, this is more of a recent thing.
Yeah, I still feel like that for me. I always thought I would think for a long time that I was up in front the longest.
Yeah.
That was like only 12 years.
I like the front.
That was a nice shop. That was a very nice shop. Morale Moyer took the chairs and the cabinetry out of that shop, put in that one over there on 45th and C.
Oh.
I thought about driving over there to see, I don't know if there's still a shop there or not.
I think there is.
Is there? I thought about driving over there to see what that looked like. We had beautiful wooden cabinets. I mean, they were real wood. The cabinet maker made them, built them, and everything. Had the waiting chairs. The fellow had a Treaster Green used to have where Cook's Real Estate is. They had and they had a guy there who built the waiting chairs for it too. It was a really neat place. Had paneling on the walls, carpet on the floor in the waiting area.
And you used to ride your bike to work?
Or walk. Very convenient. That's
Yeah.
where I should be today.
And then how, do you remember buying the house on 24th Avenue? How did you hear about the house being for sale, or?
Had a customer by the name of Norm Fernandez owned it, and I don't know, I don't think it was he who told me. I think it was Jerry Wymore was a realtor. And I think I had looked at a house, we had looked at a house on Irvin Way that the guy, a fellow by the name of Lawrence had owned it. He owned Lawrence's department stores, remember that?
The Lawrence?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he'd owned it, whatever, and Jerry Wymore, I think, had it listed, and I went over and looked at it, and he thought it was too much house for me, for some reason. I think he was the one who told me about the house on 24th Avenue, and Norm Fernandez owned it. I went over on a Sunday by myself. Your mom didn't even go.
Yeah.
Went by myself and said, this will work. So we bought it.
And was he the developer or the architect for that?
Well, he had developed some of Hollywood Park, and then he went into, and he had a real estate license and was a developer, a contractor type, and he went over into Greenhaven 70 and started building over there. And we went and looked at that. I mean, not to buy, just went to see it. And it was just, probably 10 or 12 houses on that area at that time. It was just open country out there. And he had built a house for himself over there, Norm Fernandez had, so, yeah. That's a great house. That house on 24th, that was a great house.
What do you remember about we were talking about the barbecue in the family room. Did that thing actually work, or was it supposed to? I don't know if I ever used it. I remember having a grate on it.
It was a grate on it, and I say fire pot was.
You had that famous fish fry on it, remember?
Oh, that's right. Well, that's right. I forgot.
Almost burned the house down.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that.
That was just practice.
I did that on Route Ave too.
Yeah, we have a pool when you're going to burn this one.
That's going to be hard because I'm not allowed matches anymore. Probably won't happen here, Greg.
That's the first thing they take away from the arsonist.
Yeah, that's right. First thing you take away from old people.
So out of curiosity, was that family room, was that added on afterwards?
It had been a patio. It had been a patio.
So they enclosed it?
They enclosed it, put windows and stuff in there and enclosed it, because the floor had a little slant to it, to the, where you had the.
Yeah.
Yeah, to the water.
It took me a while to realize that this was odd having a barbecue.
Not the norm, I mean. Which, when it was outside, that was fine, right?
Yeah.
Before it was enclosed.
But also that there was that big plate glass window separating that room from the living room. I'm wondering if that's still in there.
Did you keep the
Probably
barbecue
not.
there?
Yeah, it's still there.
One of my most entertaining moments was watching, there was a mouse in the family room. And you guys closed off the door, and we were all like at the plate glass watching
you kill.
you and Mom and mom's up, I mean, thinking she's on a farm, and here she is up on a chair in hysterics, and you're with the broom trying to kill it, and it was just like a Tom and Jerry cartoon.
I'm sure mow and let's mow or something, right? Yeah, I remember that.
That was strange.
Thanks for the laughs.
And then the pool on the side yard, that was, did you have one pool or two pools, or did you
One
have
pool.
one?
One pool.
That was always the same pool? You
Yeah,
never got a new pool?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
the old
It
pool.
was put in, like, early 70s, right?
Probably.
Because I was going into
Yeah, I think I was.
sixth grade.
Yeah, I think I was in 7th or 8th grade.
Yeah, and we had the 2 peach trees back there that you had.
Took them out.
And they were great peach trees too, I recall. But that was
Yeah,
a lot,
but-
I remember being impressed with all the work that you did, getting the
That was a
grass
job. That
out,
was a job. I had that.
bricking that in and,
Took the edger and cut the thing out, then dug it out by hand, took all the sod out. I made a cement
yeah.
thing around the bottom. Yeah, that was a Jack Sapnell came over and helped me doing something. I guess when I was laying the framework out for that, but I remember it was Memorial Day. He had been up the mountains fishing. He came back down and it rained. Just, I mean, the sun was out and everything, and apparently the cloud went up. It was just a really cold rain for just minutes, a couple of minutes. Then he came over from his fishing trip up in the mountains. He was saying how cold it was up there. He came over and helped me lay the framework for the bottom of it and stuff.
Do you remember the first day when it was in use and these guys react?
Yeah, they could jump. The water was so cold you couldn't stand and put your hand in it, but they,
Oh yeah, we went in anyway.
Yeah.
that happened almost every spring though.
Yeah.
You know, kids just stand cold, shivering.
I'm not cold.
We used to jump out of the 2nd story
Yes,
window.
yes.
Oh yeah.
Really? Yes. And Greg
I would
jumped
never
off the
consider
patio roof.
Oh, man.
Did you use the patio roof to jump into the pool?
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that patio was so rickety, it was always.
Yeah, it was scary.
The neighbors probably wondered what the hell.
So when did you take up golfing?
Right after the twins were born. First time I played golf was with Randy Matsky. They were helping take care of the twins. And he had a set of clubs and we went over to Perkins Golf Course. He and I played 9 holes. I didn't play 9 holes. We went over there and he had clubs that had played golf. I had never played golf. So we went in there and we said, "Look, can we wait and just go out the 2 of us?" The guy said, "Well, we're really pretty busy. I don't know if we can do that." So we, I guess, putted around for a while. Then they called us to the tee, and there was this father and son. They put us together, and they belonged to Valley High Country Club. And the father said, "Well, we're just out here practicing today." And so we got out there, and I didn't know how to play. I had no idea. I couldn't hardly hit the ball even. And so every time I would miss hit or not do anything, he would give me a few tips on what to do. I finally just picked the ball up, put it in my pocket, and walked around with Randy the rest of the way. And then I started playing golf with Father Clancy. And he was about as good as I was. So I went and took lessons from Tom Doris that fall out of Big Maloney, and that was kind of my downfall when I got, then it became an addiction. You become hooked on the stuff.
You get one good hit and you're addicted.
Pardon me?
You get one good hit and you're addicted.
I'm waiting for that one to happen.
It doesn't take much to get addicted.
I'm waiting for the good hit.
Yeah, I remember we used to play in the summertime. You'd take us out and we'd play on Mondays.
Yeah.
I remember you wouldn't let me play, you wouldn't take me out to golf until I practiced. And I'd always go over to Joaquin Miller and I'd just hit the ball back and forth.
I did that a lot too.
I did that for summers. It felt like, and then
What about any particular stories about, not Fred and Vi, but Roy and June? I mean, did you, with Roy, did you cook with him, or did you guys, how
Oh,
did you?
he cooked. He
You cooked?
did you drink with them?
Yeah. God, I remember this one time Saturday night they had invited us over for dinner, and he made this chicken on his, he had one of those green eggs, I think, or something like that. One of the
Oh,
things.
yeah.
And he made this chicken, it was, but he's put it on like at 7 o'clock at night, and then started drinking, and we ate about 11 o'clock. And but still, the chicken was still really good, but he was so smashed, he kind of sat there and then went to bed. As soon as he was done, he just went to bed.
Like passed out, you mean?
No, well, yeah, he could handle an awful lot of alcohol.
He was a consumer of life.
Yeah, yeah. You knew when he was drinking because he was.
Yeah, I mean, he enjoyed everything. I mean,
He was always, when he was drinking, he was
Not
smoking.
listening to anybody.
no, not that part.
He didn't smoke other than when he was drinking. So he'd call up and he'd say, well, I need a cigarette. And you knew that right then that he was on a binge.
He was lit.
He would drink until he was,
And
Big jugs of wine.
Yeah, the gallows.
he would drink out of that.
and June would partake just as much, or?
No,
not?
June wasn't, no, she drank beer.
Shams. I think it was
No. Pabst Blue Ribbon,
Oh.
the big bottles.
Shams.
She'd drink 2 of those after work, those liters.
A liter, 2 liters?
She worked pretty hard. She worked at the Army depot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 liters every night.
Yeah,
God,
but
how did she live to?
I went with Roy down to Frosnetti's.
Yeah,
down
on
there.
Floyd Road.
And he takes the bottle, the jug in, and they refill it for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, one time when we were living there on Gilligan, he Sunday he said, "Go with me. I'm gonna go around town." So we went down Old Sacramento. Before it was Old Sacramento, it was still Skid Row, and he went from bar to bar. Find out if they owed him any money. He was betting on horses at all these places, and he'd have a drink every place we went. I didn't, because those glasses were real smoky looking. It looked like they'd never been rinsed even. And we must have gone to 4, 5, 6 different bars. He was drinking at every one of them. We stopped on the way home at Old Ironsides.
Yeah.
On that
So,
street?
Yeah, we go in there, there's this guy sitting at the bar, obviously been drinking all afternoon. And of course, Roy had to have another one there. So I don't know how this worked out, but it decided we were gonna take this guy home, because he couldn't, to his house.
To Roy's house, or?
No, to this guy's
Bad
house.
decision after another.
It was totally smashed. We kind of lifted him out of the car, took him up to the front porch and set him on the front porch and left. And then went out home. I assumed somebody found him out there and took him in.
Yeah,
But Roy was almost...
do we know that it was his house?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Just in a.
I don't know how we figured that out. But Roy was almost as bad as that guy by the time we got ready to go home. But Roy was quite a character. Yeah, he had a great Martin guitar that he drank too much. He kicked holes in it.
Oh,
Everything he had all
yeah.
patched up. And it was a beautiful guitar, but
Yeah, probably worth a lot of money today if it was in
Yeah,
good
he
shape.
abused it. But
So I have a question.
Sure.
So your siblings, is Case, when was the last time you heard from Kay? And is she?
well, she died 4 years ago, something like that. She was 98.
Okay.
So she was 10 years older than me, so that would have been 88. I would have been 88, so 2-3 years ago.
And she was in LA?
No, she lived in Mexico.
It just seemed like we never knew your side of the family very well. And I'm wondering why that was. I mean, it's just, your
Well-
family just didn't keep connected, or you didn't visit each other much, or?
Kay was living out away from it. Well, she lived in Vacaville for a while, and she moved away. Lucille lived in North Dakota,
Yeah.
out on the farm.
But when we went to North Dakota, did you see Lucille when
Yeah.
you were back there? But I don't remember going to see her ever.
Yeah, I used to see her and Mom. Yeah. And Mike and Ed were
Well, I think
there.
it was timing, Jeff. I think when you were really young, because I remember going to barbecues and family gatherings down by Garrison or Ryder, wherever they lived. So I don't know if that was Lucille,
Well-
and there was your nephews, the Ray, and
Bill and Ray
Bill
and
and
Shirley.
Ray. Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of before.
3, 4, 5
before
times.
your
You were
time.
too young.
Yeah, I think you would have been
We're
pretty
young, Jeff.
small.
Those pictures that I found those pictures.
Oh, you did? Okay.
We're talking about, well, there's nothing very good in there, but there are pictures of the whole group. There's all my siblings, my mom and dad and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
And, their kids and at these gatherings that you're talking about them. So
What's the order? I should know this, but
Kay.
Kay's oldest. Lucille.
Then Lucille, then.
Charlie, Evelyn, Beverly, and then me.
Okay.
Beverly.
And when did Beverly die?
Quite a while before Evelyn. I don't remember what happened. My niece called me and told me about it.
Now, do you ever hear from any of your nieces or nephews? Like, what was Marlene? Was that her name?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have no idea where they are.
Yeah.
Gloria.
You don't hear from them at all?
They were pretty, even with us, they were pretty quiet.
No, I've never heard from any of them. I think Shirley, Lucille's daughter, I think she lives in she used to live in Washburn, which is south of Garrison, between Garrison and Bismarck.
Mm-hmm.
Highway there. It seems like somehow there was a newspaper clipping or something that somebody had sent to me about her, some women's ladies' aid group or something through a church or something, but I haven't seen any of them, and I don't know where. I think the last I heard, Bill was in Minot. Ray was, I don't know, he'd been a school teacher, but then he worked in the bank in Ryder for a while. But
And then the Jerry out here, Charles' son.
so
Jerry.
they just scattered, I think, Charlie's kids. I have David.
Weren't they like locked up in a closet or something like that?
David was, your mom and I went into Minot one time and went over to their house. There was nobody there, but everybody left the doors open and everything. So we walked in and walked around, and ended up we found, I don't know how, we went down the basement and David was tied to the toilet down there because he wasn't potty trained. It was sad because here's this little kid about 3 years old sitting down there, and all of that I think really affected him mentally. He was just really different, and he was kind of standoffish. He never really related, kind of close with it, which you can understand that, right?
Yeah.
Could be autism too.
Well, and my sister came to North Dakota and brought him back out with him. My folks kept him here in Fairfield. He lived in Fairfield with them for a number of years.
I didn't know that.
And then when Charlie wanted him back, because he needed
Needed a helper.
Needed a meeting post or something,
Can I
Charlie,
ask
go ahead.
one more question?
Sure.
When did your parents, they met in Illinois and then they came out to North Dakota?
They were married in Illinois.
And so were any of your siblings born in Illinois?
Kay was born in Illinois.
Kay was. Now, and as far as your parents went, did you have a sense of what kind of relationship they
Oh, they had a great relationship.
I mean, were they affectionate? Did
Oh,
they
yeah.
laugh? Did
My dad was, Mama, they were, they hugged and, I mean, my dad just worshiped my mom.
And when did they move back to North Dakota?
When my dad retired at about 68 years of age, whatever that
that was
was.
Fairfield, right?
He was in Fairfield. He'd been working at the school down there. It was last job he had, delivering mail in the school. They retired from there. They moved to Grants Pass, Oregon.
Remember that.
Lived there for about 4 years and then decided to move back to North Dakota.
I wonder why. I wonder why they moved up to Oregon if he loved California so much.
Well, the problem they had in Fairfield was that through their church, their friends were all young militaries.
Oh, and they moved
And
on.
so they'd be there for a while and then they'd move on.
Didn't Charlie and Marie move up to Oregon?
They
as
had
well?
moved up in Oregon
They moved
too.
ahead of time, and then I think Grandma and Grandpa went after that.
I'm not sure which one was first.
I thought it
What about Jack Mulligan? Did he help you with some things with the house? Did you guys work together?
Jack was a neighborhood handyman. Need anything done, Jack can do it, you know?
You could fix anything,
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you could dream it.
He also helped me, I think Errol and I were doing it, I think, had brick planter out in front.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came over and helped to design it, so we got it, and how to lay brick, because I had no idea how to lay brick. But Jack was a very handy guy.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your parents and the history of them coming to North Dakota from Illinois and what you remember them sharing with you.
Well, they both grew up in Illinois. Both had, my mom was orphaned by her parents dying in the 1917 flu. My grandfather on my dad's side was a well-to-do man. He had oil wells. He had land in Illinois and had oil wells. Was a wealthy man, but became a total alcoholic. Left the family of 6 kids. My grandmother died at the age 40, so the kids were young. My dad was kind of in the middle of that group too, and he was probably about 9 or 10 years old when that happened. And they were farmed out. Neighbors would come over and say, well, I can take that one, you know, I can take this one. They didn't adopt them, but they just lived with them and raised them. And then my parents have, apparently, in this I'm not sure about this, but they lived in close, similar areas, so they ended up going together.
When do you think they met? Do you think it was high school? Or?
No, they didn't go to, my dad went 3rd grade of school.
Oh, okay.
They did.
Heck, before everybody made it through high school.
Yeah. My idea is that they grew up in the same area and somehow met. I know my dad talking about courting my mom with a horse and buggy. They didn't have cars. And they were married, I think they were both my dad was probably around 21, my mom probably about 18 or 19. My sister Kay was born a year later, and my dad had gone to North Dakota to work in the harvest fields before they were married.
Oh, interesting.
And
what year do you think that would have been?
Probably 1920s, along in there, early to mid 20s.
Oh, okay.
Well, probably early 20s. They somehow he got this connection and decided he wanted to move to North Dakota and farm. He didn't farm in the beginning. They moved back there with my sister Kay, and I'm not sure how this came about, when it came about, but he had what they call a dray line, which would be like a freight hauling business. He would meet the train in the morning and take the mail to the train, pick up the mail, pick up groceries for the grocery stores, things like that, haul ashes away because people dump their ashes from the coal stove in the alley. They would do that, haul coal to them, things like that. And probably in about 1935, 36, somewhere along there, he had a back problem from that and had surgery on his back at that time. Yeah, that was very amazing. But he apparently came out okay, and then in 1938 or 38, he bought the farm. We moved to the farm at that time.
Now, when they initially moved to North Dakota, did they go right to Ryder, or was?
Yes, yeah, they go right to Ryder.
What took them there?
Well, I think that because he had worked there on the farms during the harvest season. I think that was why and there was a family called Delaforce was their last name, and I don't know if my dad had worked for him or what, but they were the older couple, but they knew them, and I knew them later in when I was young.
Okay.
When I was going to school, I used to go over to their house and get water for them and try to carry the coal upstairs from the basement for the furnace or the stove, things like that. So I think that was where the connection was there, was that he had met them during that time. Maybe they had a farm.
Okay.
They were living in town at the time that I knew them, but must have been something like that had happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so the farm was bought in the late 30s.
It had been abandoned during the Depression, during the Dust Bowl. Yeah. I mean, I remember we moved up to the farm when I was like 4. So maybe 37, maybe almost 1930, end of 37, 38, because I wasn't in school yet, I didn't go, you didn't have kindergarten,
Right.
but I would have gone to school a year later. But we had this little tiny house, 6 kids, this tiny house, no electricity, no running water. And my dad and a neighbor moved a granary up and made a kitchen and another bedroom. So we had 2 bedrooms. And so, the 4 girls had 1 bedroom. My mom and dad had a bedroom. My brother and I slept on a couch in the living room. And
Cozy.
yeah, it was, it was really interesting. I think the thing that always comes back to my mind when I think about that, and I can still remember when we went there and whatever. I remember my sister Kay reaching up to pull a light switch on, and there was no light switch because that was how we had it in town, in the house we had in town. They had the light bulb up to a pull string on it, and we didn't have that on the farm. It was pretty.
You didn't have electricity, or
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
And how long before you got electricity?
1950.
Oh, no kidding. Oh man.
Yeah, we started out with kerosene lamps and lanterns, and then when we really stepped up, we got gasoline
Oh.
lamps and lanterns. That was like amazing. You could sit, doing homework at night, you could sit there with a gas light and you could
Yeah.
read it. And with the kerosene, you couldn't,
Oh wow.
It was amazing because it was such a yellow, dim light,
Yeah.
So it was been asked, did you grow up with Lincoln? Because it was such a,
That's really.
But I remember getting the electricity on the farm, and what an amazing thing it was.
A game changer. Yeah.
You could go through the house and turn on lights. My dad, before we ever got the electricity in the house, had an electrician come and wire the house. Before he did that, he went in town and bought a refrigerator. We had this refrigerator sitting in the kitchen, but no electricity. But it was a few weeks maybe or so before we got the electricity. But my dad was he was sort of like a kid in ways like that. He got so excited over neat things, little things and neat things. So he was just, I remember about this big half a gallon big as our refrigerator here, International Harvester refrigerator, sitting in the kitchen.
Yeah, that must have been a big.
And we had lights in the barn and had a yard light outside between the house and the barn, so you could see when you're walking at night.
No more flashlights or I guess there were flashlights.
Well, we didn't.
Lanterns.
We had lanterns, but in the wintertime, you wouldn't light the lantern until you got in the barn.
Oh, okay.
Because it would blow out the wind, the nasty winds and stuff like that, they would blow it out. So you'd walk across the snow and stuff in the wintertime.
Yeah.
With no light until you got, and then you got the barn, which was little hazardous, probably lighting a lantern in a barn with straw and hay.
And methane and all the other things that might happen.
Yeah, it was, but we all survived it.
Good.
The good part. So it was a very interesting upbringing.
When you think about the sphere of your life, from that to where you are today, you think about other generations that have grown up, they probably didn't experience those kinds of swings, where you went from no electricity to the technology that we have today, and the fiber optic and all the niceties we have today. So
I've talked many times about with my parents how starting courting in a horse and buggy and then flying in airplanes on trips.
Right.
What a span that was. But I think my lifetime has even been more changes.
Yeah, probably.
Because we went from my first automobile to where we are today with all electric
this stuff that we're doing here.
This electric cars. It's unbelievable where we are today. So I think that's something we have to think about, and how each generation things change.
Yeah.
Probably some better, some not better, but it does change.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We need to think about that, I think, and it's great to be able to go back and rethink those things. And I think even today I appreciate a lot of those things that have happened. That when I think back about going through the house without electricity or no bathroom, things like that. And today you walk in the house and you turn on this, you turn, it's
that
huge.
point of reference that a lot of people don't have,
Yeah.
because, you know, children that were born today had all of those niceties. They already had, somebody who was born, you know, 30 years ago had the internet, had all of these things that they were born into.
You had color TV when you were a kid, you know?
I do remember the black and white TV.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I remember the Magnavox 21-inch color TV. It was like, wow. We had about 2 programs a day on it that was color. The rest of it wasn't. But you went from that to where are you today with your electronics?
Yeah.
None of this,
Yeah.
right?
No, none of it.
So,
Unless you have a television station.
yeah, it's interesting how, when you think about what a change there has been in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Of course, the thing that always sort of baffles me, because I don't know how to think about it. I think, okay, so that's 90 years that I've been here. That's quite a while.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like it to me.
Right.
It doesn't, I mean, when you talk about 90 years, it's like, oh, that was just a few years ago that I was in high school.
Right. Right.
And it's not, I don't know how to describe it, but it's not the years, it's the events,
Right. Right.
you know?
The milestones.
Yeah, I think that's where you, and I still can't relate to 90 years of it, but when you think back about, you know, when I was in high school and here I am today, still, you know, cutting hair, here, all these different things that happen. It's a lot of things that happened at that time, but it doesn't seem like that long time.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I don't know if that does with younger people.
Well, I think things get compartmentalized in most lives, but like with you, you've been at the same location since what year did you move into that shop?
1961. 61.
Yeah, so I mean, 2 years before, you know, Kennedy was assassinated, you moved into your current location. You know, so I don't think many people have that kind of longevity in their work span.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little different with you, but you've definitely seen a lot over the years, and you've had a pretty good life.
I couldn't ask for anything better in my family. I just have a great family. Everybody, I used to always kid about it. People say, well, how's the family? And I said, great, nobody's in jail. You know, that's a significant thing today.
Sure.
I mean, not that we don't know a lot of people, but I mean, there are a lot
Well,
of
we've all stayed employed, you know, the kids anyway.
Absolutely, everybody is nobody's down and out and sitting on the street corner, you know. So, and that I can't take credit for that. But I feel it's really neat that many people have survived and been successful.
Yeah.
You know, I think about this again, going back to my young days. You know, when I graduated high school, my friend Howard Bradley was killed 2 weeks later. He was a family of 6. He was the oldest in the family and was killed in a car fell on him. So here we are.
Yeah.
We're all still here.
Yeah.
I feel very blessed by that. And I feel very fortunate when I think about it every day.
Well, I really appreciate you spending the time doing this.
Hey, do you know how good this has felt for me?
No.
When you walked out the line, I was so emotional. I didn't think it would be. I just thought, oh, we'll just sit. But going back and rebuilding your life and thinking about things that I hadn't thought of
Sure.
for years.
Yeah. It dredges up a lot of emotions.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I still remember the first question you asked me is, what is your first memory?
Mm-hmm.
And I can picture that today as clear as what happened when I was 3 years old.
Wow. That's amazing.
Here, I'm not talking about harm, but I feel very fortunate. I still have a mind. It's still, I can still remember names and remember people.
Right.
And I think it's because I'm still working and involved with people that does it. But every so often something will come up in my mind about somebody that I knew years ago, cut their hair, played golf with them, something. Right. And all of a sudden their name comes up, clear as a bell to me.
Yeah.
I just think it's so amazing. And I'm sure I told you about this customer of mine who was retired. He was a banker, retired, and his father was a doctor. down in Sacramento way back. And before he died, he sat down with his father with a tape recorder.
Oh, yeah.
And they recorded the thing. And I thought, you know, I thought about it. He had told me about that. And then when you mentioned doing this, I go, oh my God, that would be so neat. I just, because I think there are, not that anything about me is special or different. It's just who you are, what happened, you know.
Yeah.
And with this fellow, I think it was very interesting. You know, here's this doctor who was treating people with old methods of stuff. Had an office down, you know, had an office downtown. He would come home at lunchtime and have lunch. He had a girl working opposite to answer the phone, and I suppose he's a nurse type thing. But the two of them, they had an office downtown. They weren't affiliated with the hospital. They weren't affiliated with an insurance company. They, you know, you went in, you paid him $2 for your office visit, you know.
And that was that.
And that was that. And it was a business, but he was a professional, you know. And so, I probably told you this a million times. My memory is, but I have memories of things. I was out, when we were out on the farm, I was probably 10 years old. I was out in the field cultivating corn with a team of horses and a corn cultivator. And you had a seat you sat on the cultivator, and you had your feet in these stirrup-like things, and you had two handles up here that you held, pulled down, and the shovels went into the ground. They were not, you know, they were like this. They'd go in the ground. There was a series of them on each side, and they would work up the ground in between rows of corn as it was growing up. You know, the horses straddled the row of corn, and this did too, but you worked at 7 feet. Well, I'm out there, and this team of horses had a hold of this thing, and there was not a handle on this side. There were just these two pieces of metal came down, and when the shovels came up, thinking like this, well, I hit a rock, and it pulled this one up, and I caught my finger between these two pieces of metal. And it just broke it out. You know, nail was all, whatever. And I remember jumping off the cultivator, leaving the team of horses standing in the field. And they were a gentle team. They didn't. And I ran up the house. My mom was there. She took me into town to see Dr. Grandgard, who again was a little small town doctor. Had his office there in his house. And I went in there, and he looks at it. I'm still remember. He said, I think we're going to take that finger off, Mrs. Stults. I remember almost passing out when he said it.
Oh, yeah.
And Mom said, well, isn't there anything else you can do? Well, let me take a look. And he pulled the thing out kind of like a breadboard on a counter, and where he had his cabinetry. Looked at it. He took a pair of like scissors thing and cut the flesh out. No Novocaine, no nothing. But it was pretty much dead, you know, no.
Right.
And he cut the nail back and put a splint on it, a metal splint, gauze, and then a metal splint on it. And he said, okay, Miss Stults, that should do it. Mom goes, Dr. Grandcoat, could you use some chickens? And he said, no, Mrs. Stults, I have all the chickens I could use. Because that was how people paid him, you know?
Yeah.
Now you go in and hand me your insurance card.
And wait for half an hour to get rejected.
Yeah, you know, that was so different. So, So, I mean, they were, you know, they did everything. They delivered babies. I don't think they ever did this guy there never did any surgical type thing. But very good life. If I died today, I would have no regret. I would not want to, but I love life. But I couldn't say I have any regrets about what I haven't done. You know, I've had basically a very simple life. You know, get up in the morning, go to work, come home at night, type of thing. Had a few vacations, but not a bunch. Used to go to North Dakota on vacations. But other than that, I haven't done a lot of things. But my life has been very good. It's just I have nothing that I haven't done that I would want to do. To be honest with you,
Right.
You know, I mean, there may be some trips you could say, well, I wish I could have done this, or not wish could have. Maybe would have been nice to have done. But I have to acknowledge that at 90, I'm not going to be getting on an airplane and flying to Italy, you know. So I could be worn out, be a little beat up when you got to, I could do that. I don't have any desire to do that. So my life has been very fulfilled.